If you are elected, what flood mitigation strategy will you advocate and implement to ensure that the City of Calgary, the economic engine of Canada, is protected during the next inevitable flood?
Mark, would you like to lead off?
Thank you very much. The flood certainly is not a theoretical academic exercise for me. I too was flooded and have experienced some, I got off of that, frankly. But I experienced some of the discomfort and the evacuation for 3 weeks from where I live. We lost our underground parking. I live in a condo building. So 22 cars submerged, 22 cars lost. Well, in the end, cars can be replaced. Families, however, face damages that are far greater than that. So what does the New Democratic Party say about flood mitigation? We advocate a tripartite approach. One, proper watershed management. We all know that the watershed right now is in difficulty. We know that clear cut, that excessive RV, recreational vehicle usage, and all kinds of other things have denuded a great part of our mountain areas, and we are losing the root systems, both of trees, of shrubbery, and of course of grasses. We need to hold the water, first of all. Two, we need to involve cities and communities together in the other part of that tripartite approach. Unfortunately, I cannot support, even though it would benefit me personally, just building the Springbank Reservoir. That alone does nothing for the communities upstream or downstream, other than a few narrow communities, such as the one I live in. We need to have a holistic, integrated approach that involves increasing the Rose River capacity. I know Don Farrell at TransAlta served on a selection committee with her. They say that there's a limit to how much that can be done. We need to explore with them how much more we can do in that area. In Calgary, we have to work closely with communities. We have to listen to the flood mitigation procedures that work and those that didn't. And we have to work with the mayor. The mayor's quite right about this. Not enough discussion has occurred about flood mitigation. Here we are, expecting perhaps a 1-in-100-year event that you know and I know will occur much sooner than that. And any approach that doesn't also take into account the idea that we have to plan for a drought. Because part of global warming, and that's what's causing part of this, part of global warming is that we're going to go through drought cycles. So any reservoirs that get built must be lined in such a fashion that they can hold water. Barriers across the Vote that create other eddies and an overflowing of banks are not necessarily the way to go unless they've been planned by hydrologists and geologists together. City, province, community working together. We need also to look at expanding earth dams where we can, further up, and that's a little more costly, but you know what? Better to spend the money now. We have to front load the efforts we're undertaking, get them done at the top of the process, not wait 5, 6, and 7 years. Frankly, folks, we don't have time. We need to do this. And we also have to respect, and I'm a fisherman, that the Vote is one of the greatest trout rivers in the world. If we deepen channels within the Vote, we have to take due regard and caution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your comments. That was very good. And just to add on to it, I think what we've got is a lot of interesting learning that we've done in the last 2 years. And I think the provincial government has spent a lot of time working with the communities and looking at the possibilities of what we need to do. Certainly, we have the two different watersheds, one off the Elbow River and the one off the Bow. And the Elbow one, they have, I think, gone further ahead because of looking at the Springbank off-stream diversion. And if you want, you can Google that. You can get a ton of information and get up to date on what's going on the Elbow to see how that's going to go forward. Provincial government's also been working very closely with the City of Calgary, work on the Glenmore Dam, stormwater outfall improvements as well, and Heritage Drive permanent flood barrier as well on the Bow River. Also looking at the Center Street Bridge lower deck and what they're going to be able to do if and when we have those high waters again. As one other thing that people need to understand, what's going on at the moment is there's a lot of negotiating going on between the provincial government and TransAlta. for the upstream, and what's going on with the negotiations is with the public company. So a lot of that's going on at this time, and that's in private. That can't be disclosed because you have a public company that's being dealt with. But they are working hard to move that forward. Mark has talked to someone that he knows at TransAlta that's given him some information, but that is something that I think we will see coming forward in the very near future so that we can handle the waters off of the Bow River for the future, making sure that we minimize any problems with the flooding. I think the province is working very hard on both of those fronts to make sure that the city of Calgary is not affected in the future. And we will see that being effectively run in the future through the both Elbow and the Bow River water runs. Thank you.
Yes, Mark, I assume we'll see sometime in the future that we'll be protected, but not this year. 2 years. 2 years. 2 years and no substantive action. That's a serious problem for many people who have experienced the flood and the damage, the psychological and physical and the financial losses. As a physician who's worked in prevention most of my professional life, I guess I fall back on 2 major principles. One, anticipate what could be worst-case scenarios, plan for them, and plan mitigation measures before they happen as much as possible. Many people couldn't have anticipated the extent of this flood, and climate change moving in on us has changed the game, clearly. Having said that, this government has failed to implement even the recommendations that Peter Lougheed recommended in the 70s about protecting the eastern slopes. That is our lifeblood. If we don't get a handle on reducing all kinds of development up there, it's a wonderful tourist area, it's a wonderful area for wildlife, it's a wonderful area for the natural habitat that we so value and that brings so many people here. That should be protected. That is our water source forever. If we allow drilling, if we allow logging, if we allow excess of vehicles, as Mark has said, this is not appropriate for our watershed. This is our lifeblood. So number one, we should be taking back our forestry leases. We should be protecting that in perpetuity, as New York did, as Vancouver did. Number two, we had an opportunity, I would say, to stop building on floodplains. Again, Peter Lougheed brought in a law in the 70s. No more building on floodplains. Only one problem, nobody enforced it. That should have applied to High River, obviously. It should have applied to many areas in Calgary. We continue today to build on floodplains, and we still don't have updated maps, flood mapping. 2 years, Mark. Where has the government been? We're still dealing with outdated flood mapping. Thirdly, I guess, the question about the recommended engineering mechanism. We do need experts. We do need evidence. Before we make big decisions, we want to know what are the chances that this expensive intervention is going to produce the best result, given the various rivers from the mountains that could be affected in the next flood. We know it's going to be more common than 1 in 100 years. Everywhere else is experiencing this. And again, as Mark Jakinda said, we are likely to get droughts as well. We need to plan for both. How does a private company, TransAlta, manage to preserve its electricity generation, which needs more water? How does it balance that interest with the public interest of maintaining water in drought years and providing control of floods in heavy years? It's got a conflict of interest. No wonder it's taken 2 years to negotiate with TransAlta. They don't want to find an agreement unless it's very financially viable. I am not blaming TransAlta. Theirs is a business, and they've provided electricity and water management, and they're one of the greatest wind generators in the country, TransAlta. But they have a conflict of interest. The government of Alberta has a very clear interest, protecting the public. Maybe it's time for a radical solution. Consider the Alberta government taking over our watershed, including TransAlta's dams, in the public interest.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Is it 5 already?
We all know that, we all know and we've all experienced the devastation of the 2013 Calgary flood. And myself, both my daughters were affected. both in living in condos in the downtown area and a lot of good friends of mine. I spent 72 hours myself shuffling people out of the downtown core, moving people around the drop-in center up to the Edmund Trail location, and then going back and helping clean up the drop-in center myself. With regards to the flood, we all recognize that there's two fundamental reasons the flood happened. One, record rainstorms, particularly over the Bragg Creek area, and secondly, the flood that came downstream, upstream from the mountains down towards us. The fundamental reasons why we had the problems on the Bow River and the Yellow River itself is that we have reservoirs, Ghost Dam and other reservoirs upstream that were built in the 1890s, 1930s time frame that actually had capacity to be able to hold the 100-year floods. The unfortunate, as Mark has referred to, is that over the years, through forestation and everything else such, silt has actually flowed into the reservoirs themselves, such that we don't have the capacity to do 1 in 100 anymore. It's at best maybe 1 in 50. So one of the things that we need to take a look at is dredging and cleaning out some of the existing reservoirs themselves, so that we can restore. The second thing we need to take a look at is, again, from a upstream perspective, is there additional capacity out there that we can find to be able to store the water upstream before it comes downstream? Looking at the Springbank Dry Pond area is one solution, certainly, but not the entire solution. Looking at the entire solution requires, a watershed management program that is not only considered a flood, but also considered a drought and considered a public utilities. When we talk about public utilities itself, and as Dr. Swan has referred to here, it's a public utilities where there is profit interest there as well as a public sector interest. As a government, we need to ensure we protect the citizens, we need to protect the property owners, we need to protect the rights of individuals in addition to allowing for licensing utilities. We talk about understanding the situation relative to future floods. A lot of it is having good information, good maps, as Dr. Swan referred to, having flood maps that are up to date so we know exactly what's going to go on and where. The City of Calgary has done that since 2013. The City of Calgary has updated their maps, and we know exactly where the erosions on the riverbanks are, know exactly what the conditions will be, so that we can plan for proper development. The province needs to do exactly the same thing. That's it.
Now, there are two other questions that we're going to propose. These are two questions that have been brought up in collaboration with members of the Board of Directors of the Calgary Leadership Forum. Question number one, again, it's, they don't know anything about this question. We want to know how they can think on their feet as individuals and as candidates for their respective parties. So, quote, each political party and leader has outlined an economic policy of tax cuts, tax increases, deficit spending, downsizing, and a multi-year program for economic growth. As a member of your respective party caucus, what are your views on Alberta's economic framework and fiscal programs to achieve economic growth?